It's December, and across India, the rice harvest is underway. In the space of a few weeks, the nation's farmers will gather 100 million tons of grain, the main food source for almost 1.5 billion people. But at this farm, in these fields, a different story is playing out. These are some of the rarest rice varieties in the world. All of them collected, saved and planted by scientist and seed saver Dr. Debal.
When I saw that these thousands and thousands of varieties of rice are getting extinct from farmers' fields, then I thought that before it's too late, let me conserve some of these. That's how it began.
Through decades of travel across India, Debal has assembled a collection of 1,440 varieties of rice. Each one has its own special properties.
Every variety has its story. Every variety has its uniqueness. We have in my collection 22 varieties of rice which can grow in 12 feet deep water.
Whereas planted nearby is a variety that can provide food with very little water.
Even if there is not a single drop of irrigation, even delayed rain, too late rain, too scanty rain, they will survive, those special varieties.
And these special varieties are all endangered. Most no longer found in farmers' fields, their last remaining seeds saved and planted at Basuda Farm, a living repository of diversity, human innovation and agriculture spanning millennia.
The thousands and thousands of varieties of rice, they were created by farmers over thousands of years. Not in the laboratory by the lab coat wearing scientists. This is the material, genetic material, which is feeding the entire population of the world.
But Debal has done as much as he can to keep this rice diversity alive. This harvest at Basuda Farm will be the last.
My physical stamina is gone. That's the main thing. And also the limitations, like the lack of enough space, lack of manpower, and lack of funding, all three. So I can't overcome beyond this. So
I've travelled to Basuda to meet Debal and learn the story of the seeds he's collected and saved, to explore their past and follow their future. Because every single grain of rice you see here is too precious to lose. I'm Dan Saladino, a food journalist and author, and I've travelled around the world searching for the world's most endangered foods, to document the incredible diversity created by farmers over thousands of years. A diversity that's disappearing. To me, these stories mean everything. They represent our history and culture, politics and pleasure, economics and power. And I'm convinced we need to save what's left of the world's food diversity, because in an increasingly unstable and uncertain world, it gives us options for the future. On my travels, I've met pioneers, visionaries and heroes, people who've dedicated their lives to saving our agricultural inheritance. One of the most inspirational of all is Debal. It's early morning and I'm feeling exhausted following a 12-hour journey by car, by plane, by train, but it's worth it because I'm standing in one of the most food diverse places I've ever visited. This is in Odisha. It's a farm Debal has created. It's in an extremely remote region where there are tribal people. There is rice diversity unparalleled anywhere else in the world because there are more than 1,400 varieties that Debal has collected here. And today some of that rice is going to be harvested. Deb founded Basuda Farm in southern Orissa, in the undulating plains of the Nirramgiri Hills, part of a dramatic mountain system, the Eastern Ghats, which stretches for 1,000 miles. This is a place of damp, deciduous forest and a rich biodiversity of birds, snakes, butterflies and more. And to that, Deb has added even more biodiversity. Not only rice, but also trees and plants he's collected on his travels, many also at risk of extinction. In Sanskrit, Basuda means Mother Earth.
The original idea was to conserve the rice varieties. That's how I came. But then when I saw this beautiful biodiversity, I wanted to include my farm in the same forest ecosystem so that eventually it becomes a part of the forest. It's a continuum. The forest, agroforestry, and agricultural agroecosystem, like that.
During the 1960s and 1970s, with the spread across Asia of the Green Revolution, a small number of genetically uniform types of rice replaced the thousands of locally adapted varieties. Farmers not only lost their own seeds, but also their independence. The new varieties left many dependent on chemical fertilizers, pesticides, and irrigation. As a trained ecologist who carried out surveys of India's biodiversity, Deb realized a huge amount of India's traditional rice diversity could still be found in the most remote villages. And so for a quarter of a century, he travelled by train, on motorbikes and on foot in search of the last farmers growing these traditional varieties. Debal wanted them to understand that their work and their seeds were important, and also a means by which they could regain their sovereignty. And to save this endangered food, he'd ask them for a sample of rice to save, grow, and then share with other farmers, and increase the chance of keeping this edible diversity alive.
The whole of this work is not for the scientific community. It's mainly, primarily, and finally for the farmers, sustainability, and to establish or re-establish farmers' sovereignty, which was lost in the course of modernization of agriculture.
Decades after his first travels across India in search of rice diversity, Debal's visits to villages to meet farmers, to collect and share seeds continues. Seeds he will analyse in a laboratory to understand their properties and also grow and save them at Basuda Farm. Deep in one of the most remote parts of Odisha and the district of Koraput, Debal has arrived in a hamlet home to members of the Paraja tribe. This community lost all its traditional varieties of rice and became dependent on just a few modern ones, something Debal has helped to change. Well, I'm now in Koraput, and it's taken 7-8 hours from Debal's farm to reach this village. This is one of the locations in Odisha that Debal has travelled to in the last 26 years. incredible journeys into remote villages to make contact with people, to find out what rice they're growing, and then to use his seed bank to replace some of the traditional varieties. And this is one of those villages, and the farmers here, 9 of them, are now growing some of the lost rice varieties of India.
We are actually visiting this community of Baraja tribe, all agrarian. Earlier they used to be hunter-gatherers and shifting cultivators, but some of them still continue with the shifting cultivation, but majority is settled cultivators. So we distributed many of the forgotten seeds of rice and some millets to this community. So we are now revisiting those farmers.
And so they used to have their own indigenous native rice, their traditional
Yes,
rice,
of course.
which they lost.
They lost some of the special varieties that they used to cultivate because of the introduction of some modern varieties. So I reintroduced those traditional varieties again, which used to be cultivated here in this district, meaning they were cultivated by just one single farmer on one farm. So we rescued them and then distributed to several farmers.
One of the farmers told me this. There were many benefits when Debal returned the lost varieties to us. Our traditional rice tastes much better, and we could feel they were healthier. And these are seeds we can keep at no cost. They belong to us. But Debal's years of travelling, of collecting and growing have come to an end. He no longer has the stamina to keep up the work.
One day I blacked out in the field in Koraput when I was giving training to the farmers. My physical stamina is gone.
And it's not just the stamina needed to keep the farm going. There's also an exhaustion that comes from working without government funding or support from major NGOs. Debal says he has no choice but to let his small team of helpers go, people who've shared his determination to save rice diversity.
I am not able to give them sufficient wage, which they deserve. Even a car driver of an NGO or the government, forget about the government, or even a sweeper in a bank earns 2 times higher than their salary. Despite the fact that they are working starting from 7 o'clock in the morning till 11 o'clock in the night, never complaining for a single day. I am bound because I don't have any fund. So this is why I decided that this year, the last harvest.
To save this endangered rice diversity for the future, we'll need a different approach, one that doesn't depend on Debal saving seeds.
It cannot be indefinite. I cannot extend it for another century.
Yeah.
I cannot extend my lifespan for another century. So if they're not accepted by farmers, if they're not multiplied by the farmers, at some point they will die.
Have we arrived in the village?
Yes, this is the village.
The solution, Debal hopes, lies a short walk away from Basuda farm. When Debal began sharing seeds with farmers, he created a seed bank, which is based in a neighbouring village, and he named it Vrihi.
So Vrihi is the Sanskrit name for rice, broadcast rice. So I gave this name of my seed bank as Vrihi. The idea is that now I broadcast not just the seeds, but also the idea I broadcast, and they will germinate in the minds of the people as well as in the field.
Inside a small, modest mud brick building sits one of the most valuable rice collections in the world. The building is part of a family home to ensure the seeds are under the protection of the community. For added security, the names and origins of each sample are identified by number only.
And this accession code is
A code is kept by Debal.
and we have inside this one, there are all this is one packet, this is one packet, and you can see this packet is written B104.
The contents of these pots represent the work of generations of farmers, their decisions, their selections, a process that has taken thousands of years, which in turn gives today's farmers options for the future. At Vrihi, they can share their own seeds and collect those deposited by others.
This is an exchange system, no money involved, so it's an expanding circle. In these 25 years, it would exceed 17,000 farmers we have distributed.
The seeds from Debal's last harvest will come here to be stored, and then the entire contents of this seed bank will be shared out to a group of farmers who volunteered to keep the mission going.
So from this one place of Vrihi, there will be 22 places of Vrihi, distribution.
And you can step back a little.
Yeah, I mean, I will continue to work, not exactly growing all of them. The mandate of growing every year and characterizing each of them every year, maintaining the genetic purity, that task will be relieved. I'll get relieved of that task, and that will be continuing. But of course, I'll continue to give the backup support to each of them. In case of any kind of doubt or help, I will always be there. And I expect that they will also transfer this knowledge to other farmers. They will also replicate the seeds and give to other farmers. Which is already happening. But the main thing is in the knowledge and the skill to maintain the genetic purity. That was not happening. So I hope from this year, after this training, these future conservators will also maintain this and also transfer the skill to others.
The last harvest marks the end of the work at Basuda, but Debal Deb's role will continue in other ways, not as a seed saver and grower, but instead as a scientist working in a laboratory. "600 miles north of Basuda Farm, on the outskirts of Kolkata, is Debal's lab. Some might attempt to dismiss Debal's attachment to rice diversity as a love of folk wisdom or a romantic ideal of traditional farming. But this is the reality, a process of DNA sequencing and careful analysis by Debal and his assistant. It means every claim Debal makes about the unique properties of the rice he's saved is backed up by rigorous scientific testing. Of his most surprising discoveries is a rice collected from a remote tribe that contains nanoparticles of silver. In modern medical practice, silver is used to treat infections. And so Debal was awestruck when he realized the tribe had been using the rice for the same purpose for centuries.
Scientists hardly ever acknowledge this debt to those unknown, unnamed scientists who developed those varieties, who created those varieties. Now it's extinct from the farmers' fields. I am the last repository of that variety. You get more amount of food per panicle. So this is one. The second was that the earliest one.
This is essential work and also expensive work. And the only reason it continues are the donations from people who believe in Debal Deb's mission.
So it's totally crowd-funded, funded by friends. They give this kind of donation. Even a tea shop owner gives me 200 rupees every month. That's my pride and joy.
Debal's last harvest is now in, and my journey through India to follow his work is over. It's work I've found inspiring, and I hope its legacy will continue through the efforts of the farmers he's trained. The seeds they're now responsible for would have been lost a long time ago, without Debal Deb. We all need to know Debal Deb's story more than ever. Like the rice he saved, his work and his ideas are too precious to be lost.